Good morning. My name is Doug Beach, and I'm the chair of Pathways to Hope Steering Committee, and I want to welcome you back to day 2 of Pathways to Hope. We began 6 years ago, bringing people together from across our community to have a conversation about mental health and how our community can make an impact on improving mental health. This year, we're dedicating the conference to the 3,817 people who have died from COVID, and to the people who have risen to the occasion to take care of them, and in many cases, to walk alongside them. And I also want to take just a moment to thank our sponsors and our partners. Without them, we couldn't put this conference on. I want to thank Bexar County and Judge Wolf, the City of San Antonio, Ann Helmke and Melody Woosley, and our Mayor, Ron Nirenberg, who we heard from yesterday, the West Care Recast Foundation and Beverly Watts Davis, NAMI San Antonio, First Presbyterian Church, one of our founding sponsors, St. Mark's Episcopal Church, and Virtual Productions, Inc., which is producing this conference for us. I also want to thank our steering committee and our many community partners who you can see on our website where they're listed. So with that, let me introduce, let Veron Blue introduce herself this morning.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be with you. My name is Veron Blue, and I serve as one of the pastors at Family Life Christian International Ministries. And I also serve as one of the leaders on the Bridges to Care San Antonio team. I'm so excited to be a part of what's happening in all of our hearts and in our communities concerning mental health. So welcome to day 2.
Thank you, Veron. And today we're really going to focus on community and the role that community plays.
Someone said before, Doug, great things happen in community. They said alone we can do so little, but with community, we can do so much. That is absolutely true. And so we will first hear from Reverend Jermaine Alberty, the Executive Director of Pathways to Promise. And Pathways to Promise is a national interfaith mental health ministry. He will introduce 2 of this year's awardees for a Lifetime Achievement Award and for Mental Health Champion.
Then we'll hear from the 3rd Pathways to Promise awardee this year and our opening speaker, Dr. Paula Dobbs Wiggins.
And next we'll hear our soul stories, stories of people who have become wellness champions in Bridges to Care, stories of how Bridges to Care has changed them personally, professionally, in their families. And that plenary will be followed by a panel of faith leaders who will also talk about how Bridges to Care has changed them and their faith communities. That's going to be interesting. Please join us.
And finally, this morning, we're going to hear from Dan Gillison, who's the CEO of NAMI National. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And Dan is one of the leaders in our country in so many areas, but particularly in bringing community together and addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion.
We'd like everybody to join us for that. And then we'll break for our afternoon workshops. But before we do, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Rajam Ramamurthy to share words of inspiration with us. Dr. Ramamurthy is a founding member of the Interreligious Council of San Antonio since 1996. She is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Pediatrics at UT Health. She believes that knowledge and sensitivity for the religious beliefs of patients help the healing process. She is a 2017 Peace Laureate of San Antonio for her pioneering work in San Antonio for connecting Eastern religions in the process of interreligious understanding. What an awesome thing. Welcome, Dr. Ramamurthy, for words of inspiration today.
Namaste. Good morning. Please stay with me when I quote a passage from the language Sanskrit. Chita, chinta, dvayor madhye, chinta nama gariyasi, chita dahati nirjivam, chinta dahati jivinam. Between Chita, the funeral pyre, and Chinta, the mind that worries or is troubled, Chinta is more devastating. Chita dahati nirjivam. Chita burns the lifeless, but Chinta dahati jivinam, the mind that worries, burns the living. In searching for a suitable mantra for this morning, I chose this one that my husband mentioned. I thought that it was so true of mental health malady that consumes the patient, but more the loved ones around them. After putting this very worrying thought in your minds so early in the morning, let us try to bring some peace. If you would, please say this sound with me. Ooh. Om. The word Om is spelled A-U-M, represents awake, dreaming, deep sleep, as well as conscious, unconscious, and subconscious states. The simplest and most easily recognized of the Hindu mantras, Om, a single word said in 4 sounds, A, U, and the 4th sound is silence, which is where the connection with consciousness happens. Aum may be simple, but it is also powerful. There is a great deal of meaning packed into it. The sound and vibrations of the mantra have a calming feeling, making it a perfect way to achieve silence and peace of the mind and focus when you pray or you meditate. In this complex world, during these tumultuous times, it is most urgent that each one of us spend a few minutes every day nurturing ourselves. According to Sadhguru, a wise, realized person, who I quote, the human body is a very complex chemical factory. Managing it from the outside is very difficult. You could manage it from the inside, but you must have access to your insides. Yoga gives you access to the very source of creation, throbbing within you, within all of us. If even a drop of this intelligence enters your daily life, you will live magically and not miserably. End of quote. Faith organizations have much to offer to reduce stress, loneliness, and burnout through Dhamyata, reduce avariciousness, Datta, charity, Dayatvam, compassion, and Dhyanam, above all, mindful practice of prayer. Om Shanti. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Ramamurthy, for being here this morning and sharing your words of inspiration. It's a perfect way to begin this Saturday morning here at Pathways to Hope. Next, I want to introduce Reverend Jermaine Alberti. And as you heard earlier, he is the Executive Director of Pathways to Promise, which is a national interfaith mental health ministry. And he's going to make several awards. We began this about 4 years ago when Pathways to Promise met here from around the country. They participated in our conference and the awards were established and first presented. And we've carried on that tradition through this year. So you're going to hear from Reverend Jermaine Alberti at this time.
Well, hello, everybody. I am Jermaine Alberti, the Executive Director of Pathways to Promise, and we are here today gathered for a very special occasion. We have 2 friends of Pathways to Promise, Reverend Alan Johnson and Reverend Barbara Myers, and you're going to learn more about why they are here in a moment. But let me share with you a little bit about Pathways. We started back in 1988, yes, over 30 years ago, by a group of dedicated people representing 15 faith groups and 2 mental health organizations. And today we are an interfaith assistance resource center providing both virtual and in-person support to faith, spiritual, and non-spiritual communities. And we are just so excited about the work that we're doing. And today we are going to have a conversation with Alan Johnson and Barbara Myers. And at the end of that conversation, we're going to make a very, very, very big announcement. And so I gave Alan and Barbara a couple of questions. I'm going to ask that question and then ask both of you to respond to that. But before I do that, let me tell you just a little bit about who we have with us. Alan Johnson is a mental health advocate who serves on the National United Church Board of Homeland Ministries. He's a retired chaplain at the Children's Hospital in Denver and serves as the chair of the UCC Mental Health Network Board of Directors. I believe recently retired, is that correct? From
Almost.
Okay. And we have also with us Barbara Myers. Reverend Myers is a Unitarian Universalist community minister whose ministry focuses on mental health issues, and she's affiliated with Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Fremont, California. That's a mouthful there. And what's so great about this is Barbara released a book recently called Held. Give us the rest of it, Barbara. Held, the rest of it.
Held, showing up for each other's mental health. I don't know if you can see that. Okay.
Yes. So listen, if you don't have a copy of that, we want to encourage you to get a copy of that book. I had a chance to provide just an endorsement of it, and it was a great read. So I encourage you all to get that book. But why have we gathered here? First of all, the first question that I wanted to have you all address to our audience is, what brought you to this work of doing mental health ministry? Alan, share with us what brought you to this work.
Oh my goodness, I can look at it in several different ways, but I want to start with this because I really got involved in the ministry many ways because of Pathways to Promise. You probably did not know this, or maybe you did. It was in September 2009 that there was a Pathway to Promise conference in Belleville, Illinois. And that was the same year where Craig Rendebound had asked me at one of our national UCC gatherings that he asked if I would be the chair of the Mental Illness Network that Bob has been part of for Bob Dell for quite a while. And I said, well, I'd be glad to do that, but there wasn't anybody. And so I went to Belleville conference. And of all things, I sent out the call. Is there anyone here as part of the UCC that would like to be part of a mental health ministry in our denomination? And because there are many faith traditions there, many congregations, 17 people came out. And that is really one of the seeds that the reformation of what became the Mental Health Network of the United Church of Christ. So how does it begin? That was one of the ingredients, is really because of Pathways to Promise. So I want to thank you for your ongoing work, as you just talked about it, Jermaine. So, but for most of us that are involved in this kind of work, it's because it's personal. It's not just organizational. We need to figure out how to organize, obviously, in order to help the ministry to continue. But it really is because of personal stories, my own personal experience. And we all have our own different ones. I mean, part of mine is 37 years ago, my son was manic in the city of New York City, and I didn't know where he was. The police said, you'll find him either in jail, in a straitjacket, or in a body bag. And I thought, there's got to be some other options this. That was the first time that I learned about what a mental illness, a brain disorder, mental health condition looks like in my own family. He was found, he was on the streets of New York City, and he was hospitalized. And that was the first of 21 hospitalizations up to 3 years ago, where he's doing very well now. But I thought, so that's my own personal experience, but how am I going to find the resources or structure an organization that can maybe help those of us that are impacted by mental health issues and concerns? And it's the First Congregational Church in the United Church of Christ in Boulder, Colorado, when a family had 2 adult children who died by suicide within a year of each other. And the congregation, we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what resources available. How can we support this family? And it also resonated in me, since not only I was at that particular point trying to learn more about my son's own bipolar disorder and substance use disorder, but also my brother, 3 years younger, had died by suicide. And so when those of us in the congregation are experiencing this, we asked sent out the call again. Anybody want to get together? And again, there are about 20 people that came together and said, yes, we're all impacted by mental health concerns, ourselves or loved ones. And what can we do? How can we develop how about a mental health ministry? And that really was where it began to germinate in our thinking and in our organization. So we began to do educational programs every month. We had a mental health Sunday. We started a spiritual support group for mental health, inspired in many ways by Nancy Kehoe and Craig Rennebaum, who had visited here to help us formulate what that was like. So, I mean, we had a lot of partners in terms of pulling this together. We are not just silos doing this. We had a lot of other people that were doing this as well. So it was really in that congregation that it became clear that it was not just these 20 people, but everybody in some way had been impacted by some kind of a mental health condition. And how were we going to respond? There was this moment of inspiration. I don't know when it came, but it struck one person and said, well, what we really want is to make these faith congregations and ourselves welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged about mental health. Why don't we call it WISE? Mm-hmm. My goodness, it took off from then. The UCC, I don't know, other faith traditions, were covenantal. We have to put a covenant together, and then we all vote or live and then live into what our commitments are. And so it really is the WISE program that took off from this one congregation in Boulder that now went nationally through the United Church of Christ, and now is working with synagogues, other denominations. And so, am I drifting off from your question there, Jermaine? I mean, there's so many different ways, but again, it was personally and personal, and that's what continues, I think, for those of us that have been so impacted in our own family lives or ourselves, that we continue on to find ways, therefore, to organize this in a way that others can be brought in.
I want you to just jump in there and share with us also what brought you to this work of doing mental health ministry.
Well, you both are right. It's the personal lived experience that brought me. My ministry is largely motivated by my own personal experience of living with a mental health disorder. It was diagnosed shortly after my daughter was born in 1978. And I was diagnosed with major depression and spent some time in a psychiatric ward because I was suicidal and needed to be there to be safe. And even though I was, glad that that I could be pretty easily brought back to functioning status, I felt like there's something wrong with me as a human being because I had had this experience, and for a long time felt very just basically unhappy with myself as a human being. And it wasn't until I went back to my psychiatrist and told him that I didn't want to live my life like this. I didn't want to live my life being so unhappy with myself. And I got into sort of a pretty regular time seeing him and exploring what was really going on. And at one point he asked me, "What do you do for yourself spiritually?" And I said, "Nothing," because at that time I hadn't been doing anything for many years. And so he asked me if I thought I would like to learn how to meditate. And when he said that, my first thought was, "What? Sit around and do nothing? I think you should be doing something, But I had promised myself that I would do whatever he said because I really wanted to get better. so he had me a little book, and I went home and read it. And I didn't realize at that time how unusual that was for psychiatrists to suggest something like that. And I was just incredibly fortunate. I don't know, my psychiatrist think it was the hand of God that brought us together. But I started reading the book, and after a few weeks, I went back to see him and I said, I don't know where it came from, but I'm happy. And he pointed, I'll never forget this, he pointed at me and he said, it came from you.
Mm.
And that was like my whole way of looking at things, I realized was not true. You know, what he said was true. You know, there is something precious, unique, and holy that's inside of every human being. And it was inside of me. And I never had envisioned it like that. So I started going to church after that. And I felt so incredibly, I didn't tell people that I had had this experience of being in a psychiatric ward. I told the minister, but I didn't tell anybody else. But that church was so incredibly welcoming and warm and embraced me as a community, held me in love. And I ended up starting a depression support group at the church. And then later, you know, wanting to learn how to run a group would be a little more effective. Maybe I could take a class in pastoral counseling. And I went to a Unitarian Universalist seminary that was in Berkeley, and they let me take a class there. And then after I was in the class for about halfway through the class, I thought, this is what I need to be doing with my life. You know, this is really where it is. And I ended up changing my career and, you know, retiring from my job. And I was a software engineer before, so it's quite different. And went to seminary and with the intention of having a ministry that focused on mental health. And so I've done that since 2004 is when I graduated, and that's when I started this ministry. And I looked around for other models of what was being done, and I saw what Alan was doing in Boulder and what, you know, some other people were doing in the Methodist church. And, you know, that gave me ideas of what I might want to do for my ministry. And we've started just recently, you know, a couple of years ago, we started a mental health network for Unitarian Universalism. I was using the same words that Alan used to describe his network. And he was very gracious about showing me, you know, how they set up their bylaws and that kind of thing. And, you know, we borrowed what we thought we wanted. And, you know, we're now, you know, organized at the denominational level and a nonprofit and all that stuff. So it's quite a journey, but you're right. What got me started was personal experience. I mean, if I hadn't had that, that wouldn't have given me the feeling that I am called to do this work.
I want to thank both of you all for sharing. It's wealth of just like, I tell you, it is hope that guide us. It is truly a call. And I'm so grateful that you all accepted the call. And it's amazing to me how if someone would have asked me what I would have been doing maybe 20 years ago, I would have had a whole different thought of what that would be. But life had a way of calling me to this work. And as I've said to many, it is my passion. It is my purpose. And I am so glad that you all answered the call. And I have the distinct honor as the executive director of Pathways to be able to do special things like call folks up and say, guess what? The board voted and made a decision that we want to share with the listening audience and want to share with the world. Each year, we offer 2 awards. We offer a Mental Health Champion Award, which is for individuals who have made a significant contribution in one of the areas of mental illness, developmental disabilities, and substance use disorders. And we also offer an award called the Lifetime Achievement Award, which is intended for individuals who have spent a significant amount of time with documented accomplishments in the field of mental health and faith-based who have had a significant impact on individuals and organizations. You all have mentioned some names of people who have been honored. We've honored Craig Rennebaum with the Lifetime Achievement Award, Susan Gregg Schroeder with the Lifetime Achievement Award. And today we come to make a couple announcements. We are so happy to announce that Reverend Barbara Myers has been chosen to be our mental health champion recipient for 2021. So yes, yes, yes. And we are so happy to announce that Reverend Alan Johnson is now the 2021 Lifetime Achievement recipient. And so we wanted to just bring you all, yes, 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 yes. We wanted to bring you all to share this message because this is going to be announced officially at a conference at the end of this month with Pathways to Hope. And we just wanted for those who looked at, why are these recipients receiving these awards? Well, we've heard in the last 20 minutes why, this calling, this deep work, this lived experience. And so we are so excited to award these to you. And so I would like to wrap up this time together with any closing remarks that you may have that you would like to share. So let's start with Alan, and then let's end with Barbara. And I'm ready to receive those closing remarks.
Well, what an unexpected honor you have given me. I'm deeply appreciative of the recognition. People that I've worked with, that I've honored, that I've respected so deeply. You've mentioned their names as well. It just is humbling for me to be even associated with them. So I accept the award humbly and just so profoundly grateful. And I think it was Meister Eckhart who said, if the only prayer you're going to offer, if it were thank you, that would be sufficient. So my thank you to Pathways to Promise.
And yes, I also am humbled and greatly honored by this award. And I'm going to thank Pathways to Promise for giving me this vote of confidence in the work that I've done. It's very deeply meaningful to me, and like as Alan said, it was unexpected, and just very grateful. So thank you.
Well, we are so grateful to be able to honor you all for your work and for your service. And we want to encourage folks to visit the website that was mentioned earlier. We'll get those on the screen for the WISE initiative, WISE program, as well as Barbara Myers' new book. We'll get that all available at the end of this video for you all to tune to. Visit Pathways to Promise at www.pathways2promise.org. And we are so grateful for Alan and Barbara, you sharing just a little bit of your time with us on today. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you. The journey continues. Right.
Yeah, it is not over.
Exactly, right.
I am so grateful that we will continue this work together.
I want to thank Jermaine for making those presentations. And also, I just want to take a few minutes to say something about Jermaine and to thank him. For many of you who don't know, we began talking to Jermaine well over a year ago, probably at least a year and a half ago, about Bridges to Care in St. Louis, where he had been involved. And he was instrumental in bringing the people from St. Louis to San Antonio, in helping us learn about what Bridges to Care was all about. And it was, and he continued working with us to help us put together the program here in San Antonio. And everything that we have done this past year with Bridges to Care, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to Jermaine. And Jermaine, in honor of your significant leadership in helping us create Bridges to Care, and even though you don't live in San Antonio, we officially present you with the Compassionate San Antonio Award on behalf of Mayor Nirenberg and all of us in San Antonio. So, and you will be receiving an award, as they say, in the mail. It will be there shortly, but we wanted to let everybody know what a great contribution you've made to our city. And also, I just reflect back on when we first brought Pathways to Promise to San Antonio for this conference, and the awards that have been presented. And it's just been a rich, wonderful relationship. And we owe a lot of that to you. So Jermaine, would you like to say a few words as a new San Antonian?
Well, I am pleasantly surprised. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, pleasantly surprised. And thank you so much. I feel like San Antonian already, because we have trained close to, as the mayor said, 300 people in this model that we created. And it's just amazing that it takes a community to make this happen. And I'm so grateful for you and NAMI San Antonio and all the other partners that have made this great work happen. So thank you for the recognition and the honor.
Thank you, and I know we're going to be continuing to work together throughout this year. And you know, I don't know whether it's good or bad, Jermaine, but I'm getting so many calls from around the U.S. People saying, "How do we do that in my city?" And so there's more work to come, but it is really exciting, and we owe you again. It's just been a wonderful relationship with Pathways to Promise. I encourage everybody to go to the website to learn more about what they do. Barbara and Reverend Johnson are just two examples of what outstanding individuals are associated with Pathways to Promise. And it's just a real honor to be on the board for Pathways to Promise and to even get to know people like Barbara and Alan. Thank you, Jermaine.
Thank you so much, Doug.
With that, we're going to, I think, take a short break here for a minute, and then we will be back with our next speaker this morning. Welcome back. I hope everybody had a chance to take a quick break. Those were wonderful presentations by Jermaine Alberti, and it was great to have him back at our conference this year. And we want to continue along two lines. First, we're going to have our next speaker, Dr. Paula Dobbs Wiggins. She is the third awardee this year from Pathways to Promise for being a mental health champion. And she's also our keynote speaker this morning. Dr. Dobbs Wiggins is an MD and a board certified psychiatrist and a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. She has a private practice specializing in the treatment of adult affective disorders in Dallas, Texas. Dr. Dobbs Wiggins is also a retired professor of the practice of pastoral care at Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University, having served on the faculty from 1999 through 2019. Throughout her career, she has worked to increase dialogue and collaboration between mental health and religious professionals to promote greater understanding of mental health conditions and decrease the stigma that often results in people not availing themselves of effective treatment. Dr. Dobbs Wiggins is a native of St. Louis and received her bachelor's degree in biology, cum laude, from Harvard College and her medical degree from Harvard Medical School. And during her senior year of college, she responded to a call to Christian ministry and was licensed and later ordained by the Elliott Congregational Church in Roxbury, Massachusetts. She is a strong advocate of community service and currently serves as the chairperson of the Board of Managers of Parkland Health and Hospital System in Dallas, Texas. She is a longtime member of the St. Luke Community United Methodist Church, where she serves. Dr. Dobbs Wiggins, welcome this morning to Pathways to Hope, and thank you for all you do. And congratulations on your award. You will be receiving, as I told Jermaine, it's in the mail. It'll be coming to you since we're not meeting in person. We'll have to send it to you. But congratulations and welcome this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I am truly honored to be here and to have received this award and welcome the opportunity to share with you a bit of my journey toward in mental health treatment and advocacy. We are at a time it is really a hopeful time. When it comes to supporting and advocating for mental health, we are indeed in a season of hope. We have come a long way from the time when people only spoke of mental illness in hushed tones, if at all. And one need only turn on the news or pick up a newspaper to see there is greater interest and openness and understanding not only recognize mental illnesses, but also the impact of mental health on all aspects of life. Athletic performance, healthcare delivery, political decision-making. You know, people are now starting to recognize that if they're going to be whole, if they're going to be well, if they're going to operate at their full God-given potential, they must be as concerned about their mental health as they are about their physical health. We are indeed living in a season in which it is also recognized that social determinants, such as educational level, housing availability, healthy food availability, employment status, and economics, have a major import on health, both physical and mental health. And many would say more of an impact on health than even biological issues that may be going on. Because of this, we can indeed have hope that recognizing that there are connections between physical, emotional, spiritual, and social aspects of our lives opens the way for clinicians, faith leaders, politicians, and community leaders to come together and work collaboratively to enact and support programs that can have a significant impact on the overall health and well-being of not only those who live with the challenges of mental illness, but the entire community. This is indeed a season of hope and opportunity, one that we cannot afford to miss. As I reflect on my own journey as a mental health clinician and advocate, I can assure you, it has not always been this way. I want to just share some steps along my journey as I have come to be involved in this work and advocacy. When I applied to medical school in the fall of 1977, my application essay was about what I believed to be the interconnections between physical, emotional, and spiritual health, and the importance of addressing issues in all three areas when trying to increase the overall health of individuals. Now, there were some people who thought this was an interesting thought, but I had many experiences early on that demonstrated that at that time, many people believed that the physical, emotional, and spiritual realms were quite separate. My faith had always been an important part of my life since early childhood. And in college, I elected to take several classes that were jointly offered to undergraduates and divinity school students. And toward the end of the fall semester of my senior year, I did indeed experience a call to ministry. And on December 11, 1977, just 10 days after I'd received notification of my acceptance to Harvard Medical School, I preached my initial sermon at Elliott Congregational Church. In the Ecclesiastical Council meeting that followed, I shared my thoughts about the interconnections between physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And I was challenged by a member of the council who wanted to know if I felt that healing was primarily a physical or spiritual process, and was disturbed when I responded, both. When he learned that it was my plan to enter medical school in the fall, he withdrew his support of my licensure to become a minister, even though he said I had preached a pretty good sermon. But his feeling was that a person must approach wholeness and health either from a spiritual or a physical perspective. And clearly I had made my choice. Fortunately, he was only one member of the council. And I was indeed licensed that day and later ordained in that same church. When I started clinical rotations, there were challenges there as well. I was often assessed as being a capable clinician with a good fund of knowledge and ability to connect and communicate with patients, but I was entirely too slow. On more than one evaluation form, there were comments that I spent too much time talking with patients about their families, their jobs, their faith practices, rather than just focusing on the medical facts, developing a differential diagnosis and treatment plan, and then moving on. And even in psychiatry rotations, there was some appreciation of learning about the psychosocial aspects of a patient's life, but many felt patients' religious practices were matters to be at the very least interpreted, and in many cases, medicated. When I looked alarmed about these kinds of attitudes, I was asked to think about things. I remember one resident saying to me specifically, look, Paula, Christians believe in, talk to, and hear from a God that they can't see. We call that psychosis. These experiences, though disturbing, did not discourage me. Rather, they highlighted for me just how little people understood about disciplines other than their own. The psych resident clearly did not know much about religion. Many clergy have limited understanding of the advances in mental health treatments. And too many internists and surgeons do not regard psychiatry as a real medical specialty. What was needed was greater understanding and collaboration across disciplines with the goal of providing the best care to patients. And this became the guiding principle of my work, both in my private practice and in other opportunities I had to serve this community. Fortunately, I have been able to witness things getting quite a bit better. While serving as the clinical director of Terrell State Hospital, one of my responsibilities was to do clinical consultation on difficult cases. And I remember being asked to consult on a patient who was experiencing psychotic symptoms, some of which were religious, who was refusing to take medications and was felt to have an unhealthy family. The social worker had reported that the family and some church members frequently visited the patient and reported that faith and family were very important to the patient throughout her life. But the treatment team wanted to restrict visitation by her minister and certain family members because they were felt to be counter-therapeutic. They were speaking in tongues, placing oil on her head, and just kind of muttering and seeming to encourage her ongoing psychotic process. Several team members commented that it was often impossible for them to distinguish between her symptoms and what these people said were their usual religious practices. So rather than shutting them out, I suggested that we invite the pastor and family representatives to participate in a special treatment planning meeting in which everyone was asked to listen to understand rather than listen to respond. It was a very interesting process. The minister was able to help the treatment team better understand the patient's religious beliefs. And the very thing that the treatment team had struggled with for weeks, trying to distinguish where the symptoms began and the religious practices ended, the minister was able to do in a matter of seconds. Yes, he said, yes, people speak in tongues and shout and dance in our worship tradition, but there comes a point when everyone is able to sit down and allow me to preach. And for the last several months, she has been unable to do that. Something clearly had changed. The treatment team, on the other side, was able to help the minister to understand the goals of pharmacologic and group therapy. And as a result, both sides gained insight. The minister gained insight into the goals and expectation of pharmacologic and group therapies. The treatment team gained insight into the religious practices of the patient. And the result was the patient began participating in treatment religiously and was soon able to be discharged. As a professor of the practice of pastoral care at Perkins School of Theology, I taught a class, Mental Health Skills for Clergy. Recognizing that a significant number of people experiencing mental health symptoms will first confide in and seek guidance from a religious professional, the class was designed to equip future clergy with the knowledge and insights that would enable them to be a good shepherd to parishioners with mental health concerns. The primary objective of the course was to familiarize students with the most common mental health conditions, available treatment modalities, and know how to effectively make a referral. To ensure that none of my students would wind up with a siloed understanding of mental health concerns, students were introduced to the biopsychosocial cultural formulation of disease. It was well known that you could not pass my class without being able to say and explain the meaning of biopsychosocial cultural. And nothing pleases me more than running into a former student who greets me by saying, biopsychosocial cultural, I still remember. In addition to class lectures, each student was required to do a study of an agency or individual provider of mental health treatment and do a class presentation on the range of services provided, referral requirements, cost of services, how clergy can be supportive of persons receiving services, and volunteer opportunities. Students also had to write a litany of caring or responsive reading that could be used in a service of worship during Mental Illness Awareness Week or Mental Health Month. There was also one class each term that was open to the public. And it was in the form of a symposium entitled Mental Health and Spirituality, Bridging the Gap. I taught that class every year for 21 straight years. And by the grace of God, it never failed to make and was often full with a waiting list. Just two more experiences that I would share. St. Luke Community United Methodist Church, where I have served as an assistant pastor for over 35 years, has always been sensitive to mental health issues and welcoming to persons living with the challenges of mental health conditions. But in August of 2016, after reviewing a church-wide survey of pastoral care needs of the congregation that identified numerous mental health concerns, Pastor Velda Turnley, who will be facilitating a workshop this afternoon for this conference, asked me to chair a mental health task force, which sponsored the first Mental Health Awareness Symposium on October 5th, 2016. The task force has now grown into a full mental health ministry that has sponsored a play that highlighted the multi-generational impact of PTSD, yearly symposiums addressing mental health issues impacting the Dallas community, a monthly 1-hour educational forum with topics ranging from treatment advances to political issues related to mental health, advocacy opportunities, school mental health resources, and a monthly mental health support group for persons experiencing mental health conditions, their families, and community members who seek to come alongside them. The ministry is led by extremely dedicated volunteers, has been able to successfully transition to a virtual format, and is regarded by clergy and mental health professionals in Dallas as a valuable resource to the church and broader community. And finally, as a member of the Board of Managers of Parkland Health since 2013 and chairwoman since 2018, I have become acutely aware of the challenges of providing safe, patient-centered, high-quality health care to all who need it in a county with an extremely large number of uninsured persons, in a state that has not expanded Medicaid, in a county that the Community Health Needs Assessment has identified as having significant healthcare disparities that have been further accentuated by the current COVID pandemic. However, I have also had the opportunity to experience how working collaboratively with city, county, state, and national agencies that impact our service population creates opportunity to make a difference. There's so many examples I could point to, but I will mention only one, the Right Care program. Dallas, like many other urban areas, had historically been challenged by how to most effectively and safely respond to 911 calls regarding persons suspected of experiencing a mental health crisis. RIGHT, which stands for Rapid Integrated Group Healthcare Team, CARE, began as a pilot program funded by a Smart Justice grant supplemented by the Parkland Foundation in 2017 to support the formation of a collaborative response team comprised of a police officer, an EMT, and a master's level social worker, which would respond to such calls in the area of the city that had historically had the most mental health related 911 calls. The team was able to provide on-site assessment and in some cases provide on-site stabilization. Referral to outpatient treatment was also able to be done, referral to available community resources, and when appropriate, transport to the Parkland Psych ED. And only when absolutely necessary and indicated, transport to jail. By the end of the pilot, the program had exceeded all of the initial expectations, decreasing the number of police resources expended to address mental health concerns and enabling patients to get to the right care. The program was expanded initially to 5 teams, and one of the joys of my work was being able to approve the budget and plan to expand it now to 10 teams. We are indeed in a season of hope. The word hope is commonly understood to mean a wish But I believe we are in a season of hope in the spiritual sense, which is the confident expectation that what is sought will indeed come to pass. I have spiritual hope that if each of us will commit to just three things: one, to continue to educate ourselves and others about mental health conditions and available treatments; two, be quick to recognize and confront stigmatizing attitudes and policies that negatively impact those who live with the challenges of mental illness; and three, be alert to opportunities to work collaboratively across disciplines to enact policies and interventions that will enhance the mental health and well-being of all. If we do those three things, we will continue to move forward in positive ways. I have hope. I hope you do too. Thank you.
Dr. Dobbs Wiggins, thank you very much for your remarks. You really characterized a lot of what has gone on in the profession of psychiatry and in ministry over the last 25, 30 years. And it feels like, as you said, we're in a better place. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think you're a big part of that, you know, for the work that you've done all these years, and you do it so well. So thank you. Congratulations again on your award. It's very well deserved, I can assure you. And thank you for being with us this morning.
And thank you, Dr. Dobbs Wiggins, for your relentless advocacy for our brothers and sisters who are dealing with mental health challenges. And thank you so much for pursuing what you knew in your heart, the way, the truth, and the life. We agree with you 100% that this is a season of hope and opportunity. Thank you so much. Your presence blessed us today. Thank you. And your smile, you have such a beautiful smile.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we'll take a 5-minute break. Please return for Soul Stories. We'll be talking to Sydney, Dominique, and Renee, ordinary people who have accepted the call to be a wellness champion for others in our great city and how it has changed their lives. So 5-minute break, and please return.
Veron?
Yes, sir.
Veron, I think I just got a message from our technical team, and I think we're ready to roll. We can just roll right into the next session, because I think your panelists may need that extra time. Or is that okay with you?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. We can go right into it. We'll just take a 5-second break.
Okay. Okay.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Soul Stories. We want Bridges to Care in My Life. That's what our panelists are going to talk to us about today. I am Veron Blue, and I am your moderator for that session. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat, and we'll talk about it with our panelists when they're through sharing. The mission of Bridges to Care is to train people to walk with others and to become better versions of ourselves. Hey, Sydney and Dominique. And this mission helps us to live out who we are and to help San Antonio become a more compassionate city. So today we have 3 wonderful wellness champions with us. We have Renee, we have Sydney, and we have Dominique, and I want to tell you a little bit about them, about who they are. Renee is a wife, mother, and a servant leader. She has been married to Billy Lavender for 32 years, and they have a daughter, Brittany, and a son, Brandon. She works in information technology and works at USAA, has worked there for almost 30 years. She's a wellness champion, and she's also working on her mental health coach certification from Light University. Dominique works in information systems also and has a master's of business administration in management information systems from Wayland University. He's married to his lovely, beautiful wife. I know she's on today, Dominique. Aisha, I just love your wife. He too is a wellness champion and working on being certified as a mental health coach. Amazing people. And then we have Sydney Randall, who has been in nursing for 30 years. She's a nurse practitioner. She's also a wellness champion and went through the training, and she actually has finished the certified. So she is a mental health coach. She's a proud mom of her wonderful son, Kenneth. So welcome, guys, to Soul Stories. I am excited to talk to each and every one of you. So first of all, I want you to tell me, how long have you finished training? How long ago did you finish training? Sydney.
Thank you, Pastor V, for this opportunity to be in here. I finished back in April of this year.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And
Did you say me, Pastor V?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I finished on March 26th of this year.
Oh, okay. And Dominique, what about you?
I want to say I finished about March or April of this year. So very briefly.
Oh, cool. So you guys are new to this whole world of mental health.
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so. Yes.
I told everyone yesterday that Wellness Champions it makes you a different person. You become someone else. Someone asked me, well, Pastor V, when is this going to end? And I said, it never ends, because you become someone different. How has the training and how has Bridges to Care made you? What has changed with you? How are you a different person?
You know, Pastor V, with me, Bridges to Care training has just changed my life tremendously. The training has taught me to listen. The training has taught me to be more sensitive to people's feeling, less judgmental, to see the person who's going through who's going through a mental health crisis, and not to focus on their behavior and action, but to focus on the person.
Oh, wow.
That's what has taught me personally.
Can you just imagine San Antonio having everybody with that mindset towards others? And Renee, what about you? How has this training changed you and being associated with Bridges to Care?
I have a long list of things, but I'll limit it because of the shortness of time that we have today. But I'm more compassionate and caring for others. I'm more understanding and less judgmental. I'm better equipped to serve others. And I'm empowered to do more than just pray and encourage individuals who are dealing with mental disorders. I can actually partner with people to help them in their restoration journey. And I have more tools in my tool belt to make an impact in my community.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so awesome. What about you, Dominique?
Thank you. So for me, Bridges to Care could not have come at a better time.
Oh, wow.
For me, I just hit 3 years of being married to Aisha. And, we've been stuck in this pandemic for at least 2 and spending more time together than what we thought. And so Bridges to Care has allowed me to be more compassionate towards my wife in this marriage. And then Bridges to Care has also helped me to understand Dominique. I often put myself last, and Bridges to Care has allowed me the opportunity to finally open up my ears and my mind to put myself first and to take care of home. And home now for me, my first ministry used to be the church, but now I had to backpedal and put my wife first. And so Bridges to Care has taught me how to be more compassionate and more loving and caring to my wife, which has really opened up communication gates for us.
Oh, you guys make me want to cry.
So
Do that today, because I can see the change as you speak with such passion, that the training has indeed changed you. And that's my number. It changes you, and for every area of your life. Responses to your family. Have you found that has changed? Renee, have you found that has changed with the way you respond to your spouse, your children, and how has that changed in your family?
Yes, ma'am. So for me, both me and my husband completed the training together, which is truly a blessing for us. We have a common language that we now share between us concerning our mental well-being, as well as our family members. We're doing a better job with actively listening without being judgmental. And we're focusing more on self-care. I don't feel guilty about doing things to bless myself and to pamper myself on a regular basis. And it's given me a totally different perspective, Pastor V, on my family members, as well as others who deal with mental health challenges. So it's been awesome.
Oh, wow. That is so, I heard you say self-care. You no longer feel guilty about taking care of yourself, because we deserve to be at our best so we can help others to be their best. And what about you, Sydney? What do you think? How has the training changed the dynamic of the family?
Oh, Pastor V, it has helped me to communicate effectively with my elder parents, to be more understanding, to listen attentively, pay attention, pick up on the unspoken clues that is mentally something that's wrong, that, you know, that stuff that behind the conversation, not only with my parents, but with my family, my whole entire family, my siblings. Because of the training received from Bridges of Care, there's less offense and more empathy on my part.
Oh, wow. That is so awesome, Sydney. And Dominique, what about you? I've heard you say, what about you? How is that? Is it helping your family?
So again, this opportunity could not have come at a better time, and God ordains every appointed time for every appointed season. And right in the process of Bridges to Care, my sister just gave birth to my niece. And it just seems like my niece was the bridge to help with the relationship with my mother and I. Mothers and sons often don't get along, especially when they have the same personality. We clash. And I am thankful today that my mom and I have a better relationship and we have a better understanding. And it has just helped to bring the family together. And I too can echo with Miss Sydney and Miss Renee that when talking to family, I no longer have a personal offense. And now I'm able to let down my walls. And it's even going into the church realm, which is a very big thing because that was my first home and now that's my second home. So it has helped a whole lot.
Yeah, Bridges to Care. They did not tell us that these were some of the outcomes when we first started the training. We took it so we can help the community. But you know what? It starts at home first. It affects you, then it affects your families, and then it affects the community, and it affects the congregation. So this is just such an awesome thing to be a part of our Bridges to Care. And I'm just telling anybody, one that's hearing me right now, you just call Jerry. We'll put her number in and you can just call and you can be a wellness champion. A couple of you had shared with me how Bridges to Care is now using the techniques on your job. Can you all tell me about that, Sydney? Would you tell me a little bit about how Bridges to Care is helping you to do a much better job where you are?
You know, Pastor V, as a nurse practitioner, the Bridges of Care first opened up my eyes that I have for many years did not handle patients in mental health crisis correctly.
Oh, wow.
Or other coworkers. The training has given me the tools to effectively recognize and to communicate with patients and my coworkers going through a mental health crisis. What a lot of people don't know is not only do you got patients in mental health crisis, but you can have nurses in mental health crisis because of the things we see. And as coworkers, we don't recognize it. Bridges to Care has helped me to see patients and to help them, and even my coworkers, to help them where they are, and to understand and to understand them and to communicate with them and help them without any judgment.
Wow, that is a safe place.
It's a safe place. And you know what else, Pastor V? It also opened up my eyes to the emergency room. We have patients with mental health crisis that come to our hospital emergency rooms. And due to the shortage of mental health facilities and the beds, a patient going through a mental health crisis can stay in our emergency room for over 1 to 2 days. But the problem with this, you have a lot of hospitals who have staff not trained in mental health. So in mental health crisis, so this is what you have. You have a patient in crisis. You have fear and anxiety on the part of the caregiver who's trying to help the patient in crisis.
And that, I know you told me about how you're able, even with your patients, that you're concerned what's happening with them and
yes,
talk with them and listen to them because you understand. So, what's happening with their brain is also connected to their body.
Yes.
It's amazing training. What about you, Dominique? What are you seeing with you and your job?
Great. So with I'm going to answer this going back 6 years. I was in a very toxic environment, working for the local county government. And if I would have had Bridges to Care then, like I have now, I probably would have still had that job. And we would have, and we would always joke around when someone quits or retires, they end up either getting on medicine or they end up, unfortunately, going to heaven or going wherever they may go. I was one of the ones that had to get on medicine because I did not know how to decompress from the monotony and the toxicness of my job. So even now, as I'm in a new job, I now know, even though I'm working from home, to leave work in my office, close the door, shut down, decompress, take some time to pray, to journal, to meditate. My wife told me to meditate a year or two ago. I did not want to meditate. It was foreign to me. I didn't want to be quiet and be still and take time to understand Dominique. But now I want to meditate. We can go meditate together because she's taught me so much. So Bridges to Care and my job, I am much more happier working than I've ever been before.
It's the truth. And I know people may not believe this, but it's absolutely true. It changes your whole every spectrum, every strata of your life gets affected by the training. And Bess Renee, what about you? What's happening with you on your job?
Yes, ma'am. So you mentioned previously that I'm in information technology and I play a project management role in that area. And this affords me an opportunity to engage with people throughout the United States, as well as people as far as Manila, India, and other parts of the world. And since I've completed the Bridges to Care training, I'm much more discerning of my teammates, and I make more of an effort to tune into how they're doing mentally and emotionally. When I meet with them, I let them know how much I care about them as a person. I encourage them often, and I let them know I'm available to support them however I can. And I provide a safe place for them to share. And the trust level has gone out the roof, Pastor V. And so it's really been nice to see how my coworkers are opening up more and sharing with me on a regular basis about their personal struggles. But also I wanted to share with you that I want, recently, one of my coworkers let me know that he was interested in getting training, right? More training, mental health training. And he's actually someone that lives in Manila. And I just want to say thank you to you, Pastor V. You actually helped me to connect him with the training that we're going through right now to be a mental health coach. And so he's in the process of doing that. So it's not just affecting us here in the US, but it's actually reaching across the divide, the oceans, right? So I'm so thankful to be a part of that movement.
Lori said, Renee, planting so many seeds in so many people. But that's what happens, Lori. This becomes who you are. So you're just yourself. I think this training changes you in the way the Bible says that we're supposed to be changed. You know,
yes,
right.
And caring for others, but it's always turned on. You're always turned on and tuned in what's going on around you, how everybody's doing around you emotionally. Are they happy? And
that's true.
Such a tool for God to use. And so I know this is the faith-based, link, so I can say that. And so I am really, for you, Sydney, someone said, this is so amazing. I can't wait to try to bring this program to El Paso. You don't have to, try. We can help you get started wherever you are. Someone helped us get Bridges to Care started. Reverend Jermaine helped us to get started, and we are happy. Jerry, I know, is happy. We are happy to help other people get started. We believe.
Yes, we believe in it.
We're not theory.
Yes.
This is what's happening on the ground. Though it's small right now, this is a huge seed. It's like an acorn. So, thank you so much for that, Renee. And I think I have time. And Diane said, I will be calling. Great. I will be answering too. And just want a couple of quick stories. I know, Renee, you had a powerful story about your barber, your relationship with your barber, Sydney. You had one about someone on Trauma Talk. So just quickly, just to show them that how much this impacts the lives of the people. We have a couple of minutes remaining. So Sydney, why don't you go first?
Pastor V, on Trauma Talk, we had a young lady that was brave enough to reveal to us that she was going through anxiety, depression, and she was by herself. Immediately after Trauma Talk, we called her and checked on her. Not only did we check on her, we walked with her. Come to find out, we actually got her connected to our Trauma Talk psychiatrist, and our psychiatrist got her connected to another at work, got counseling. Right now, that young lady, she would tell you right now how just her going through the Trauma Talk, just that Trauma Talk saved her life. She's happy now. She's in El Paso with her husband. She's in counseling. But the wonderful thing about Bridges to Care, how it helped in this situation is it wasn't no pressure on me to try to fix her.
Yeah.
I had the tools to lead her in a direction where she can get the help she needed. And that's what was so awesome. So I can just be a friend to her.
That's right.
That's
all we do. We listen. We listen some more. And I'm done listening. We listen.
Yeah.
Listen some more. Yeah.
And it teaches you to listen. And so thank you. I remember with her, we formed a circle of care around her.
Yes, we did.
Champions will call her just to check on her. And she would go to the hospital and check in just to be safe. So she would herself.
And you know what's so awesome, Pastor V? We still do call and check on her.
That's what wellness champions do. You are incredible people. And I consider the training that you've answered the call. You've answered the call to humanity, to care for others as someone else cares for you. So it's just great. What about you, Renee? What is your story? You have a very interesting story.
I do, Pastor V, and little did I know after I completed the training in March, it might have been maybe a month or two after that I would actually have a situation where I would have to apply that training in a major way. I was faced with the situation where our family barber, basically, he confided in me that he was dealing with a major case of depression. And that training kicked in right away. When he mentioned what he was going through, he started behaving in a way that was like, releasing appointments off his calendar, saying that he was going to, take off from work. And this is someone that never took off from work. I don't recall him ever telling me he took any vacation time. So when he started expressing himself that way, I questioned it. So I was able to actually ask the question that we in the training where it says, are you considering harming yourself? Because it was just that dire of a situation that he was in. And so we had the conversation, and I actually reached out to you, Pastor V, because we knew that we needed to get him assistance right away. He's a VA and had reached out to the VA to try and get connected with them, but they told him that they wouldn't be able to see him for another 3 weeks. And I knew that if that happened, that something seriously was going to, take place. And so I'm just grateful to you that you were able to help us get him the help that he needed. And I just wanted to say that we have a praise report on this because he and his wife recently went to the Bahamas. He took the time off to go on vacation, went to a destination wedding, came back, and he's a new person. He's still in therapy, but he's doing so much better. So I just want to say I lend everything to Bridges to Care because of what I went through, I was able to help him out. And every time I go to get my haircut, he's like, Renee, thank you so much for what you did for me. And I just have to give all the glory to God because it's because of him that we're a part of this training.
Yes. Yes.
It's God.
It's
God.
Yes.
Is that we're able to change and touch.
Make a difference.
Yes.
I love what I think I'm going to read what someone just said. Beautiful personal story. Christy, thank you, Christy, for your comment. She says, beautiful personal stories and experiences. I wish we could talk like this more in the broader community.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciative of you, Sydney, Renee, Dominique. As a clinical mental student, I'm almost ending my master's programs. I have experienced so many similar changes, and I am so grateful. I never want to go back to the status quo.
Yes.
Yeah, no, yes.
You never want to go back.
Yes.
Different
Can't
person.
go back.
Can't go back. Exactly.
What is going back? What is
Right.
going back?
No going back. And so she said, I'm blessed to be here and experience more with all your callings. And then Lori wrote, thank you, Lori. She said, so much of healing is just the caring presence of others. And that's the experience. And we talked about how Bridges to Care gives us the language. What about the language, guys? What has it done for your mental health language?
It's made me be more sensitive to how I speak to individuals in regards to their situation, and just, the fact that you have a knowledge of, we don't know everything. So I'm still going through training, and I'm sure that's going to be a process until I die. But what I have learned so far, I'm able to apply it, and it's making a difference in basically speaking to individuals as to where they are, and them being able to relate to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about you, Dominique?
Bridges to Care has made me more sensitive to others, but I would like for y'all to catch this. Bridges to Care has made me more sensitive to my own self.
Right.
Has made me more sensitive to my own self. Growing up, I've always been so hard on myself. My parents have told me one day you're gonna learn how to be sensitive to yourself. Oh. Now that I'm learning how to be sensitive to myself, I'm able to be sensitive to my parents, my sister, my wife, and the general public.
Absolutely. You can't be to someone else something you're not, someone you're not. And that's what's so beautiful about Bridges to Care. You become someone else, and so you're able to be that caring person to yourself. You deserve some self-care emotionally, and for forgiving yourselves, letting yourself get a break, so you can only be what you are to others. What about you, Sid?
Bridges to Care has taught me to communicate with empathy, non-judgmental, and to listen.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And in our community, we've talked about how there's a stigma to even mention mental illness or you're having a challenge. But that's probably also because we didn't have a language to communicate what we were feeling. So for example, a lot of people that were depressed just thought they were having a bad day or bad week or bad month. And so now we have a language we can communicate. You cannot communicate without language. So this has helped our community so much. Now, you guys, how has it helped with even being around praying for your brothers and sisters? How does that work? Sydney, how does that work?
It's easy. It's easy. I mean, it's loving, listening attentively, caring, I go back to that, non-judgmental. We have so many times that we focus on people's emotions, we focus on the behavior. It takes the focus off the behavior and focus on the person.
Yeah, because we can't heal what we judge. So if I judge you, I've just lost the capacity to be a healer. Right. Now, you recently had an encounter with someone who you call them just to check on them because you're a leader in your church. Now, tell us a story about that.
Called her. She revealed to me that she goes through PTSD, and that the day prior to calling her that she felt like she wanted to harm herself. She didn't want to be here no more. And Bridges to Care, I had the tools, I had the confidence to ask her the questions. Do you want to harm yourself? Do you have a plan? Of course, she said no, but also I had the confidence to encourage her that counseling is okay. Get in contact with your counselor. And I also walked with her in that process and made sure and was right beside her when she did it. So, I mean, but before Bridges to Care, I probably would have freaked out.
And also, you told me that she now wants to become.
Yes, and excited about it. And her voice and her conversation is, maybe this will help me go through what helped me. As I help others, it will help me.
Oh, that is such a phenomenal thing. Well, before we leave, Renee, do you have some last words? And Dominique, what would you like to say about Bridges to Care in your life?
I would like to
go ahead.
I would like to say that I thought I knew what prayer was before I joined Bridges to Care, and I've been raised up in the church all my life. I've joined Bridges to Care, and my prayer life has gotten that much deeper, and prayer has a new meaning to me. Prayer has a new meaning to me.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Renee, what about you?
All I can say is that I am so thankful and blessed to be a part of this community, and I'm looking forward to all of the things that God is going to bring into our lives to be able to reach, touch, and be a blessing to the community. Because previously, I mean, we've seen in the past where people were in our lives that we actually we weren't prepared to help them where they were. But this has, just like I said, it's empowered us to do so much more. And I'm just looking forward to all the things that God is going to do, because he's equipping us to do a great work, and it's going to definitely bless the community. So I want to say thank you for the opportunity, because it's because of you, Pastor V.
Yes, Pastor
It's
V.
because of you that I
Amen.
got connected to
Amen.
Bridges to Care. So I just want to say thank you for
Amen.
that.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor V.
How would you like to close us out? What do you say? What do you have to say?
Who, me? Yes. Oh, listen, love, listen, and love. And that's what I have learned through Bridges to Care. Is to listen, love people, and meet them where they're at.
Wow.
That's Bridges to Care.
Sharing your heart to us today. Bridges to Care touches every part of your life, and I wanted people to see that. Tony Evans said, change people, transform their families, and transform families, transform their communities. Thank you for transforming your families and communities. Thank you for being here today, and may God bless you.
Grace and peace.
Thank you.
Straight into our next session on, I think we're gonna do the session, let's see. We're gonna go straight into another session, our next session with about the faith community with Bishop Blue, Dr. Andy, April, and they'll be coming on soon. So we're gonna go straight into that. Thank you for all the comments you have made. Christy and Bonita and Martha and Carmen, thank you so much for all of your comments. And Michael, Todd Michael, thank you all so much. And we're gonna be starting with this session any minute now.
Veron, while the next group of panelists are coming on, I just wanted to let everybody know they can find out more about Bridges to Care. We've talked a lot about it. If you want to know more about it, go to NAMI-SAT.org, and there will be a tab at the top for Bridges to Care. And click on the tab, and it tells you all about the 5 modules, the training you receive, the principles that we follow, and also how to sign up, how to, and we talked about Jerry Gregory. She has a link on that website, and you can let her know that if you or your congregation would like to participate in Bridges to Care, there's a way to do that. So thank you, Veron, and I'm gonna log off and let you pick up the next session.
It's NAMI.
NAMI, N-A-M-I, SAT.org. And you can do / Bridges to Care, Bridges-to-Care. But you'll find it on the NAMI-SAT website. That's NAMI San Antonio.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, guys. Welcome, April and Bishop Blue and Dr. Andy. Thank you. I hope you were able to tune into the panelists before and what they were sharing with us. We are all so excited about Bridges to Care and what it has done in our lives. April, you look beautiful. Welcome. I love the colors. And today I just had a conversation with a few of the wellness champions from Bridges before, and they shared how the training has changed their lives personally, professionally, on so many levels. And so today I'm really looking forward to talking with the 3 of you about how Bridges to Care has changed your faith community. But first, I want to introduce you to the folks that have joined us today, and thank you to you for all of your wonderful comments and your motivating and encouraging us to keep on doing what we're doing. This is what Bridges to Care is, and I know we've been talking about the program. And Jerry, please go to NAMI.sat.org/Bridges to Care, and you'll find information about the training, who we are, our covenant, how we are inclusive of others, and the structure, the behavioral health networks that undergirds Bridges to Care. I would love for you to go there today, visit that website, and communicate with us. Jerry is standing ready for your email. She will respond. We'll get back to you this week. So thank you all so much for the interest that you're demonstrating for Bridges to Care. This is going to change our city. Bridges to Care should be in every community, in every city. You have witnessed firsthand how it has changed the lives of those panelists before. I promise you, it will do the same. It will change your life. So welcome, guys. Today we have Dr. Andy Gray. He's a clinical pastoral counselor and educator. He's a member of Kingdom Life Ministries and lives in San Antonio with his wife and 2 children. Dr. Andy is also a wellness champion. April Williams works as the health system specialist and administrative officer for the Department of Quality and Safety at Brooke Army Medical Center. She is passionate about ending the stigma associated with mental illness. She too is a powerful mental wellness champion. I love these folks. And then Bishop Blue, I love him too. Bishop Blue Jr., he is the founder and senior pastor of Family Life International Ministries and the president of Hope Strategies, Inc. We have been married for 33 years and are the parents of 2 great sons. Bishop Blue's life's assignment is to bring God, family, and community together. Did I get that right? All of it? I hope.
Got it right, baby.
Guys, and I am so glad that you're here. But I wanted to ask, what drew you towards the Bridges to Care training? What was that thing that made you answer the call? What was it? April, you go first, and then Andy and Bishop.
Okay, so mental health has been a passion of mine for a minute now, because so many of my family members actually suffer from different mental illnesses, including myself. I have suffered with depression for a while now. And so when this presented itself, I was like, I definitely have to be involved, because so many people, like you said, so many people do not have, don't feel comfortable going and talking about what's going on in their heads. Yeah. And because of the stigma. And so that is my passion, definitely, is to help end that stigma. So that's how I got involved, because I want to see change in my own family and in my own community. So
that is so good. It's personal to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dr. Andy, what about you, sir?
So I think for me, it was the chance to be able to do something within our faith community and with the community at large. You know, a good man leaves a heritage for his children, but perhaps an even greater man leaves a heritage for his children in the community and does things for the community. And I think that that's what we need, you know, in my perspective and my viewpoint, is working in our community and trying to make our community better for everyone that's in it. And then putting those tools to use. And I think this is one of the things that Bridges to Care has done great for us, is that it's given us lots of tools. And so really what I want to be able to see do is to meet the needs of people, us meet the needs of people in our community, and empower them to go out and do the same for others.
That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal vision for your life. Bishop Blue, what about you, sir?
Hey, you know, it was so obvious that there was a lack of mental health intelligence in the faith community. And as I began observing and hearing I felt this sense of a moral, ethical obligation to our faith community and to the community at large, that we have to begin having this conversation and integrating what we believe in our faith, our foundation of faith, and the understanding of mental health and how that could be so important in our community. And so for me, it was incumbent to, I felt a sense of responsibility. I need to really lean into this moment and educate myself. And as I began doing that, I leaned in and took the mental health training, the wellness. I wanted to become a wellness champion so that I could advocate to other faith leaders that every congregation needs to hear the voice of its leader advocating that it's God's will that we be mentally healthy.
Yes, sir, I agree with that. Now, research shows that people are more likely to go to their faith leaders when they're experiencing some sort of mental a challenge, as opposed to going to a professional. The thing was, when they came to faith leaders did not have the language to communicate with them. So how has the training changed your conversation with the faith community? How has it changed? How has it, whoever wants to go, Bishop, would you like to go first, or whoever?
Sure. Again, understanding so much about faith and so little about mental health, it was important to understand the vocabulary or the language, as you said. And I thought that I thought I understood what people were experiencing, but the language changed my perspective completely. And understanding that people have had traumatic experiences, that they haven't had a space where they felt safe or loved or supported, it became very, very important for me to begin to get a hold of that dialogue so that I could communicate compassionately and caringly to people as it relates to their mental wellness.
April, what about you? How has this changed conversations that you have now with even your pastor or your faith leader? How has the knowledge and the training changed your conversation with him?
It has definitely changed. Going through the training has given me the ability to want to learn more. And so in doing so, I did research and got statistics and everything. And in doing that, I was able to, during a leadership meeting, I was able to articulate to the leadership what an impact we could have on our community based off of knowing that the statistic of 8 out of 10 people are dealing with some type of depression or anxiety. And so during a leadership meeting, I was able to go in and ask 10 people to stand up and go out of the building as if they were coming in for a Sunday service. And while doing that, as they came in, each one of them received a program. And it was folded in half, piece of paper folded in half. 8 out of those 10 pieces of paper had some form of depression or anxiety on them. And then the other 2 were blank. And so they walked in with a smile on their face and stood before the congregation. And then as they did that, they were able to open their paper and realize that, oh, okay, this is anxiety. Oh, major depression. Okay, so what is that saying? I'm a visual person. So I wanted them to really understand that out of the 120 people that we averaged before COVID coming into our doors, that 80% of those people would be dealing with some kind of mental health challenge. And so, and on top of that, we don't need to pretend like those people that's in that 80% are just the congregation. are just laymen. Leadership deals with it as well. And so that was, I think, an eye opener for the leadership at Vertical. And I'm just happy that Pastor Will has been very open to making sure that we are whole mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's not just about the spiritual. We have to get ready on all fronts.
You're absolutely right, April. You just hit that right on the head. That is so true. What about you, Doctor? I can tell you're making an impact at Vertical already. And Dr. Andy, what about you? How has it changed your conversation with the folks at your church whom you serve and your pastor? What kind of conversations are you now having with your faith leader?
You know, I think that April's comment about 4 out of 5 is a big number. And, you know, if you're talking about 8 out of 10, that's essentially 4 out of 5 people. I think that understanding that many people have these kind of things going on in their lives is important for our pastors and our leadership within our church, because there are people like that are in our church that we may not recognize. And to that end, this is one of the great things about the training that we've had. It changes the conversation because now it allows 2 sets of people to speak the same language. So as a counselor, I have a little different viewpoint on it. And because of having the training, when I talk to someone, they may or may not understand, but by having the training and someone able to go through, we now speak in a vocabulary that's very, very, very similar. And we're also now able to implement things, programs and processes to help identify people within our church and then multiply. That's one of the things that, to me, from a faith perspective, in mental health too, right, is that we're able to multiply our efforts. It's not just, a couple people in a church trying to bear the load of doing all of the counseling and talking with people. Now we have that ability to be trained, equipped, and empowered to be able to go out and meet the needs of our faith community and let that spread out.
That is so awesome. And I know, Bishop Blue, you've had encounters with people and different things concerning mental health. Does anyone have a story you'd like to share? I think Bishop Blue, we talked about a story.
Well, there are stories that are emerging almost on a weekly basis where, for me as a pastor and encountering people, and as you said, people are open to share, hey, something's going on with me. And the wellness champion training, what I realized was, wait, I recognize that this person is telling me that there is some anxiety, or I recognize that there's some suicidal ideation. I was amazed that some of the training immediately applied to people that I see and know and experience. And so I've had several real life moments where someone came to me in faith. Maybe they wanted prayer or just to voice that this is going on, but the training kicked in and I was able to ask a person, are you thinking about killing yourself? Well, 3 or 4 months ago, I wouldn't have known, April or Dr. Andy, I would have known to ask that question as a pastor who has for over 30 years engaged people on a daily basis. Yeah. But that training, it was so important for not only for me, but for the people I was talking to, because they did respond and say, well, no, I'm not planning, but I have had the thoughts. And I understood what that meant. And I've been able to help direct people to professional help, in addition to the prayer and personal support that we offer at the church. So yeah, life changing in that I've been able to apply the skills that I've learned in the Wellness Champion training.
April is shaking her head. April, I want to know what's you right now. You're screaming, yes, Bishop Blue.
Yes. we've talked about stigma, and stigma is all over, but in the faith community, there is a real problem. And it is time to fix that problem. And so, because people, yes, people do want to come to there and get pastoral counseling, right? But not very often do they leave feeling like they've received more than prayer, right? Because we look at things so much like, oh, that's demonic. You got a demon. It's wicked.
Yeah.
So there's that stigma associated with it. And so when we have pastors who understand the language and understand that mental health or mental illness is no different than me coming to you as bishop and saying, I need prayer. I was just diagnosed with cancer. You're going to, as a pastor, you're going to say, you're going to pray for me, I'm sure. And then you're going to encourage me to go seek a medical professional and get chemo or whatever I need to have done, right? Yeah. But for whatever reason, we don't think about that with mental health. We say, oh, we need to pray that spirit out you know? And so I think it is so important that we get our pastors and our leadership in the churches involved. And on top of that, what I was discussing earlier was doing the leadership piece where I presented to them. After that, I received a text message from one of the leaders stating, thank you. Thank you so much for representing for that community, because you blessed me, because I haven't been on my medication for some time. And I'm going to make an appointment to see my provider and get myself back to where I need to be. And so we have to talk about this stuff. If you don't talk about it, you can't heal it. So.
And we have to, bring it out of the darkness into the light.
Into the light, yes.
I think I got a breakthrough when I understood that the brain is an organ, as my liver is an organ, or my heart is an organ. And occasionally things are going to happen to the organs. And when it happens, I need to go find someone who specializes in that organ to help me. And it's the same thing with the brain. And I'm like, I don't know what the stigma that's attached to it. And we sometimes in the faith communities, we think because it shows that we don't have faith, we attach our faith to something that happens to our body, to our brains. And it's just not fair to the person. And I don't think it's what God intends. And so I am so thankful, Dr. Andy, that pastors want to be trained, are open to be trained, and that they understand that this kind of knowledge is just as much as necessary as their knowledge of the Bible. Yeah. It's just as important that we know that, so people can feel safe, cared for, and that they can be the shepherds that they want to be, that they do really want to be. I'm loving these comments that I'm reading. Thank you, Diane and Vicky and April and Benita. Thank you all for your comments. I know, I'm sorry we don't have time to read them all, but I know that I appreciate them, and I'm looking at them now. And I thank you all so much for being a part of today's plenary and for sharing your opinions and your thoughts with us. Now, what would you say to a faith leader, guys, who is considering, or not really considering, who is hesitant about being a part of Bridges to Care? Because we have some of those pastors that they're hesitant. What would you say to them to help them to understand how necessary and how important, vital this work is? What would you say? Go, April, Andy, you go first, and then April, and then
So, the first thing I would say is, if you're hesitant about the training, the intent, I don't think, is through what we've gone through, is to not make someone a PhD or anything like that. If that someone comes to the training and they think, hey, maybe this is what I would like to do with my life, then that's awesome. Let's go. Let's look at that. But I think that what the training is about putting the knowledge in the hands of everyday people that within the body, so that we can go out and meet the needs. And before, I would liken it unto some of the reformers. who in times past, the Bible was only in the hands of the very elite. And they went about, and their goal was to set and take that knowledge and put it in the hands of others, so that common people could have access to be able to help themselves and their communities. And I think that that's what we're doing in the sense of the training here. You're wanting to train your people. Your people have needs. And I think April's comment about 4 out of 5 people are struggling with something like this, that in itself should be a motivator to say, hey, let's get out here and let's see how best we can meet the needs of our community and our people here. Because as a pastor, you can't do it all. You can try, but you cannot do it all. And so you need, and most pastors know this, you need that team approach. So this opens up your team even more to be able to meet the needs of your faith community. And maybe maybe it's helpful for the pastor himself or herself.
I know, because we know our statistics have shown that many pastors go through depression, isolation, and that it would be wonderful if there are leaders around him that can recognize him or her, that can recognize these signs and are there to also help their faith leaders. So that's
they're not immune.
Yes. And Bishop Blue, what do you think?
Well, I think first of all, faith leaders, we have this unique opportunity on a weekly basis to create a shift in the paradigm. We can move the consciousness of large groups of people in one moment by expressing or validating that something is significant to God. And when we address issues of society, whether it's homelessness or a lack of access to care, when faith leaders speak, we can shift the consciousness. We can be powerful in our advocacy, and I believe that is the obligation. It is, I think about 15 years ago, when our church started getting involved in the fight against HIV and AIDS, it was really devastating Black and brown communities. And it became an imperative that leaders begin talking about it. But I remember that the stigma was there, that pastors were afraid to talk about it and say that God cares and that we want to encourage our communities to know their status and get tested and get treated. And here we are at another moment where we can create a momentum that ultimately, and I believe this is going to happen, that we can build enough momentum with the help of faith leaders to bring this to a tipping point, to where the majority of people are not complaining about not getting help, but able to access help through their local churches, as well as the community and professional field of mental health and wellness. So I think that we should leverage our influence, whether that's with our constituents, but also in the community with the businesses and our barbershops and the people that we contract with. We have a tremendous amount of influence, and it's time that we use it at critical moments like this.
Yeah, and you're so right about that. And I think when faith leaders talk about it's okay to see a therapist, because people have confidence in what they say and believe that they hear from God, and so they think it's okay. God won't be mad at them if they go see a therapist or if they go talk to a counselor. It's okay. All through the Bible are men and women that had some type of mental illness, and they overcame with the help of a faith leader or their faith, but they also got help. And so it's okay. And pastors, we need pastors to be such strong advocates for mental health, because it's connected to everything we do. So to have a healthy church, we cannot have a healthy church if half of our congregation are dealing with mental issues. So we have to help be the shepherds that we know God has called us to be, and be involved in this mental health advocacy and help people become better. So what do you guys think? I'm looking at Debbie Cruz's response. I love this, Debbie. You said, God created the whole man, which includes from the head down, not the neck down. We know that if your head is not another part of your body, you have no vision. So if your mental health is not what God wants it to be, your vision will not be. And so it affects every area of your life if your head is not involved in what you're doing. And so thank you so much, Debbie, for that comment. And we have so many other good comments here on the line. Thank you all so much. And so I want to ask you another question. What do you see as next steps for Bridges to Care in your faith community? How can we help you in your faith community? What else can we do? I know we offer the training, but is there anything else Bridges to Care can be to you, not just do? Because what I love about Bridges to Care is that we are not transactional. We're not all about the doing, but our goal is relationship, about being there for you. And so how can we help as Bridges to Care? What are the next steps? What next steps do you see? April? Andy?
Yes, ma'am. For me, I think that having access to actual licensed providers is the way to go. Yes, it's good to have partners to walk with and help those that are having challenges, but if there is not affordable or free care in some of our communities, I think that we're fighting a losing battle, because we're not, as wellness champions, we can't provide any type of counsel or medication or whatever is needed. So all we can do is help them, walk alongside of them, partner with them, and help them to get the things that they need, right? And so I think that would be something that would definitely bless the community.
We're working on it. What about you, Dr. Andy?
Well, I think that one of the things, kind of along the same lines as April, is one of the things is that now that we've had this training, what's going to happen is I think that we're going to start to see people come to our community that we've created here with the Bridges to Care training. Once we implement this within our church, you're going to start to have people that are going to come and that are going to need help now. So how do we get them access, like April said, to a counselor or to a licensed clinician? Because as a church, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a licensed clinician within the church doing this, right? We're talking in terms of pastoral counseling a lot as well. So we need to have someone that have access to be able to get them care that they need. And whether that's going to be as a group, maybe the groups get together and they do some kind of program where, they'll kind of move around the city and help out. But I think this is something that we need to think about. What's going to happen as a next step of this? Now that we've educated people, now we have people doing this, we're going to have people coming out that want help. How do we meet the need? Because if we just educate, but we don't meet the need that they have, are we really doing any good? If you say someone's sick, but you're not able to write the prescription, you're not able to give them a modality to make them feel better. At the end of the day, knowing that I'm sick is not as good as knowing how to make me well.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so. And in the in sacred.org, we are also listed as a behavioral, all the congregations that go through the training, we are listed as behavioral health friendly congregations. So people will look for that because they'll know that this is a congregation that has been trained in mental illness and how to walk someone through that. And so they will come to visit our church. They'll come to our churches because they know we are sensitive and we'll listen to them. Mary wrote a really cool, it was Mary, yeah. She said, this approach is very important as there is stigma in the churches when the feeling is that mental illness is a spiritual problem rather than a disease that needs treatment. This is particularly true in minority communities, but is often considered a moral failing in other communities. Can you imagine that? That is, praise the Lord for getting the word out to everyone. Mental illness is a brain disorder needing treatment. Thank you for this approach. And what Bridges to Care does is that it equips us to first deal with our own mental needs and then the mental needs of our family, our friends, our congregations, our community, and our cities. Our mayor has already spoken and declared that San Antonio is a compassionate city. And I so believe that Bridges to Care is interwoven in that. And because of what Bridges to Care has trained us to do, and for you guys, for the yes that you have given and you've accepted the calling to be a wellness champion, I just really applaud that. I thank you so much. I'm going to pass to Bishop Blue. What do you think see as some of the next steps for Bridges to Care in our faith community?
I definitely feel that we need partnerships. We need resources so that we can create a linkage to, as April, you said, we need professional care for all of our congregations. Have someone who is just one appointment away from being on the road to recovery. But many of them don't have, they're either underinsured or not insured. And we need our city. We need the state of Texas. We need our federal authorities with their hands on the purse strings to create these mechanisms that allow partnerships between the city of San Antonio, for example, and the faith community and the NAMIs of this world. We have a great opportunity to create the linkages, and not just in churches, but if we get this right, the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Clubs, all of these community-based organizations, we can all partner together so that when people lose the fear of stigma and being rejected in their communities, that we can meaningfully put them in the hands of the Dr. Andys of this world and others with the professional training to really help that person walk through their mental illness to a place of mental wellness. I'm excited about it, and I think we're at a great moment. The fierce urgency of now, it is touching our hearts now in a way that is motivating so many of us. I'm really glad that we had this forum. Baby, you are killing it, girl. I'm gonna have to buy you lunch today.
Well, thank you. But I want to go back to Lori. I love, because this is popping up in the chat quite a bit about the stigma. And Lori says, the feeling of moral failure results in such a heavy burden of guilt and shame. And they're talking about the stigma in the churches. And I want to talk about for a second, about my own lack of knowledge. And people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And people have been dying in our community because of this lack of knowledge. And our cohort is going to change that. It's changing that as we speak. And so I've got a couple of minutes. So the stigma in the churches, what do you think what are some of the things we can do to immediately start removing the shrouds from mental illness? And what are some of the things you think we can do, Dr. Andy, April, Bishop Blue? Just give me one thing, one thought that we can do like now to start removing the stigma from this disease in our church, from this mental illness in our churches.
From my perspective, it would be to normalize it and not say that it's something that only a few people have. Normalize that people have this. And sometimes it's something that you've gone through. Sometimes it's something that happens to you. We need to normalize it, that sometimes things like this happen, and it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you a weaker Christian. It has nothing to do with your faith. It's just sometimes these things happen. Normalize it.
It doesn't make you other
than
us.
Right.
Because of what you're dealing with that, but I may have something else, but we're all in this together, advocating, caring for, loving, listening to one another. You, April, at 30 seconds.
Yes, ma'am. Someone said something in the chat about the power of the pulpit. I think that making sure that our leaders are trained and they make sure that they get out the word to the rest of the congregation. Train your people, not just your leaders, but also the community of faith that you have there.
Absolutely right. I agree with that 1,000%. And Bishop Blue.
Ditto, ditto. These guys have said it well. We have an opportunity, we have a platform, we have a voice. We need to use it to help people get to the care that they need.
Tony Evans said, change people, transform their families, and transformed families transform their communities. That is what Bridges to Care does best. It changes people so we can transform our communities. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, April. Thank you, Dr. Andy. Thank you, Bishop Blue. And thank you, Doug Bates, Ann Helmke, Jermaine Alberti, for dreaming big and starting and having the faith to just start it. Because here we are living in your dream. Thank you, guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the panelists that just presented. This is so refreshing to hear. And before we, I guess we can go ahead and bring on our next speaker, Dan Gillison. I'm talking to our technical crew. Thank you. Hello, Dan. How are you today? You're on mute.
Hi, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing great. It is really good to see you. There were several things that just came up. Well, let me first of all just introduce you, and then I want to make a comment based on the last panel as you get started. But Dan Gillison is the CEO of NAMI National in Washington, D.C. NAMI is the largest grassroots organization for mental health in the country, dedicated to building better lives for millions of Americans affected by mental illness. And I will have to say, Dan's been on the job about 1.5 years, and I am a Dan fan. You have done an amazing job. There were 3 things that came up in the last panel by our pastors talking about what do we need to do next. And this ties into your topic. One was, the question was, how do we improve access to mental health care? One of the big, next steps, how do we improve access? Second, it takes partnerships to implement this. And third, Bishop Blue talked about the fierce urgency of now. Well, Dan, if anybody ever teed this up for you so you can hit the long drive, this is it. And I want to go ahead and let you start your presentation. Thank you very much. The presentation is on finding our way addressing mental health care inequities. Thank you for being here today, Dan.
Well, first of all, thank you, Doug. Thank you for your leadership, and I want to thank NAMI San Antonio, NAMI Texas, and all the NAMIs for all of the wonderful work they do. Most important is I just want to start off by really just acknowledging all the leaders that are here, and on behalf of NAMI, our faith-based leaders, our community leaders, our political leaders, our nonprofit leaders, our medical leaders. And I'm using the word leaders intentionally because it is all about leadership, and it's going to take all sectors, all disciplines to make a difference. And I just heard Bishop Blue speak about linkages. And we sometimes, Bishop Blue, we talk about constructing the quilt and that common thread through the quilt. And what you just talked about in terms of the local community, the state community, the federal, the YMCAs, and all of that. Those are all of those very critical patches on that quilt with that common thread that has to construct the patches that we're talking about. So, and it begins with leadership. And then it goes to tone, and the last part of it is execution. And that's what Pathways to Hope does, is it looks at leadership, tone, and absolutely execution. So with that said, I want to get into the presentation. And again, thank you on behalf of NAMI and to all of the NAMI volunteers, the NAMI leaders that are participating in this. Thank you for what you do, and for all the communities that do the work in terms of addressing mental health and mental well-being. Thank you. So let me go into sharing my screen, and we'll get into the presentation. Here we are. And if you'll bear with me for a second, we will get to it. And I'm going to take you to the top of the presentation and slideshow. And here we go. Hopefully you can see the slides, and we'll go ahead and begin. So as Doug introduced me, I'm the CEO of NAMI, and I'm very humbled to be the CEO of NAMI. In this body of work, talking about NAMI, we'll just move the presentation along. I'm trying to, let me remove something here. Okay, slideshow. All right, here we go. So this is how you can reach my office, dgillison@nami.org, and you can also reach me on Twitter. And let's talk about who NAMI is. Largest grassroots mental health organization with over 600 affiliates across the country and 48 state organizations with the national office in Arlington. What's most important is when we started and why we started. We started in 1979 in Madison, Wisconsin, and we were started with a couple of moms who were looking at the mental health assessment for their youngsters, for their sons. And those assessments made them say, we need to do more. We need to advocate for our sons' well-being. And we're going to start now. And they started in 1979. So as we go through, okay, what we do, what does NAMI do? We educate, we advocate, we listen, and we lead. And every one of those, it's critical that we do them well. And the most important one is that we listen. Doug started out by talking about strategic partnerships. In our strategic 5-year plan, one of the things that we're absolutely looking to do, and we know is critically important, as the bishop talked about the criticality of the urgency of now. Well, we've actually said the time is now, building on that statement. And we recognize that for us to execute and to do what we need to be a part of that quilt. So we are also forming strategic partnerships so that we can broaden our work in terms of in this space. So we want to lead together. So that's a part of what we do. Now, why we do it. This is not anything that this audience doesn't know and is not very comfortable in understanding. 1 in 5 Americans live with a mental health condition. The average delay between symptom onset and treatment, and I want to stay here for a second, is 11 years. That really impacts our young people and it impacts our community tremendously, because what this talks about is while that young person may have actually had a symptom at 13 or 14 years old, if they're even fortunate to get treatment, they don't get treatment until they're 25 or 26. And for communities of color, that may even be longer just because of the stigma and the access to care and the inequity in care. So when you talk about this 11 years, that 11 years is almost a 2x in communities of color. Now, every 11 minutes, someone in the US dies from suicide. I'll pause for a second and share with you, because the only way that we can actually remove the stigma is if we'll tell the stories and if we share our vulnerability. In our vulnerability, there's strength. And where I want to go with this is just to share with you that a part of why I'm doing this at this station of life for me is because my peer who I grew up with, who we were the first in our families that were to go to college, and we were to represent our younger siblings. She and I were born in the same year, grew up together, and were designated as the first to go off to college. I did. Unfortunately, she lost her life to suicide in 1986. I still miss her. And I also miss my aunt and uncle, because I saw the ripple effect of what it did to both of them. And my family, this is 2021. And we've never talked about it from 1986. So this work is critically important to me. The pain that I saw my aunt and uncle and the family go through, and the devastation, if I can change that, and if we can change that for another family, that would mean the world to me. Now, 17% of youth experience a mental disorder. We need to understand that in terms of these metrics and what we're talking about, because in this last 18 months that we have navigated the COVID, the racial trauma, the economy, the elections, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the isolation has actually exacerbated the youth experience in terms of mental health. Next slide. Now let's get a little bit more into context. Here are a few of the stats. Only 1 in 3 Black adults who need mental health care receive it. Suicide rates for Indigenous youth are over double the rate of white youth. And if you're looking to gather any additional information, you can go back to an emergency task force that was convened by the Congressional Black Caucus. And this was on the crisis of Black youth suicide in America. And this is a very critical data point looking at suicide in youngsters. And this was actually commissioned, and the task force chair was Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman. And I think there's some really critical data there. And you want to talk about the urgency of now. The title of that report is Ring the Alarm. So wanted to share that with you. Suicide rates, as we just spoke about for Indigenous youth, are over double the rate. The LGBTQI community is 2 to 4 times as likely to experience a mental health condition compared to heterosexual adults. Adults with disabilities report experiencing frequent mental distress almost 5 times as often as adults without disabilities. So you've got the data here and just some of the information in terms of what the stats look like and what it means. What are the barriers? And there's 5 of those barriers. Those barriers are stigma, which you've been speaking to, cost, distrust, representation. Who's at the table representing these communities that can actually change the paradigm and speak to what isn't happening versus what is happening and what needs to change? And then bias, implicit, explicit, but bias. The distrust we'll speak to, and the cost, representation, bias, and overall stigma. Now, talking about stigma, we'll move right into it. One study showed that 63% of Black people believe a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness. In the faith community, we know you were just speaking of that as well. And, the World Health Organization coined a phrase 20 years ago: there is no physical health without mental health. How do you take the knowledge that, my son or daughter could injure a knee, and they're wearing a brace on that knee, and that gets more acknowledgement than if there's something from the neck up. So it's how do we say it's okay to not be okay? And just as you really look at your physical health, you need to reflect and look at your mental health. And how do we say it's okay to do that? So what is stigma? It gives you the definition here. Some people describe stigma as a feeling of shame or judgment from someone else. That's the last sentence in that statement. Really what I want to speak to here is a quote from B.B. Moore Campbell. People of color, particularly African Americans, feel the stigma more keenly. In a race-conscious society, some don't want to be perceived as having yet another deficit. It's looked at in that operative word, deficit. Distrust. Studies show many people who are part of racial and ethnic minorities don't trust their doctors or the medical community as a whole. And this is really in the Black and Latinx individuals have less trust. And you can tie that to drapetomania, Tuskegee syphilis experiment, conversion therapy, forced sterilization, just as a few. Drapetomania came from a medical doctor, and that medical doctor, Dr. Samuel Cartwright, a Southern doctor, who said that and created this and actually wrote about drapetomania, and said that slaves, the reason that they were leaving the plantation, if you will, was because they suffered from drapetomania. And that went on for quite some time. And there's so much more information in terms of when we start talking about the institutional racism and how does that apply to the inequity in mental health. Let's move on. Bias. Here's implicit bias. 7 out of 10 Black Americans say they're treated unfairly by the healthcare system. Let's look at the right side of the screen here, or the left for you, I believe. But upbringing, education, culture, appearance, sexual orientation, income, physical ability, all of these go into that bias that we see and we navigate through. So it's all in the lens that we look at individuals through. And it's implicit bias is an unconscious association, belief, or attitude that influences how you act towards a social group. It's part of it's unconscious association, so it becomes a part of your orientation that you bring into your work and your assessment of others. I'll slow down for a second here. Cost. Indigenous people are almost twice as likely to be unemployed, 15.7% for Latinx. People in the US live in poverty compared to 7.3% of non-Hispanic white people. LGBTQ youth and young adults have 120% higher risk of experiencing homelessness. 120% higher risk of experiencing homelessness, excuse me. People with disabilities are twice as likely to live in poverty and earn a median income 1/3 less than those who do not have a disability. Health insurance, critically important for the access of care and the disparity in terms of accessing and inequities and what we're seeing in the inequities. In 2018, 11.5% of Black adults in the US had no form of health insurance. And of the other indigenous and populations, 14.9 don't have health insurance, which is over 3 times more than the white population. And in 2018, 19% of Latinx people had no form of health insurance. This is an interesting one from the standpoint of, well, who are the doctors? Do the doctors look like the community that they actually are representing? Only 4% of US doctors are Black, 4.4% are Latinx, and less than 1% are indigenous. 86% of the psychologists in the United States are white. Only 2% of the practicing psychiatrists in the United States are Black. So when you start looking at representation at the table and being able to actually influence the work in this space, you also have to look at, as we look at going upstream and early identification of young people living with a mental condition, we also have to go upstream and really work to create the pipeline of more medical professionals and more young people going into the disciplines of medicine and behavioral health services. So let's talk about the pandemic. The impacts of COVID-19 have disproportionately affected communities of color. That's not any new news to this audience. The rates of depression and anxiety have absolutely increased since the murder of George Floyd. There is the real issue of, what about my loved one? What about me? What about my family? And what's our place? So there's so many different questions inside of this. And you heard me mention at the beginning, I believe I did, about fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There was a tremendous amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that came out of and during 2020, leading us into where we are now with 2021. And that fear, uncertainty, and doubt has not gone away. It's still here. And we need to do everything we can to make sure that we see it for what it is, and then do everything we can to support individuals that are trying to navigate it as much as possible. Now, let's talk about culturally competent resources. Do they exist? We say here they're still scarce. I would say they're scarce. And those are critically important in the space we're in and in providing the services to the community. Now let's pause and speak to the way forward. There was a study that was done, a Stanford study, Does Diversity Matter for Health? And there was a study that was done with Dr. Owen Garrick, Marcella Alson, and Grant Graziani. And this study from the University of California, Berkeley. And this study was with 1,300 Black men in Oakland. And what it looked at was their experience in accessing medical care and how they received feedback on medical care. And inside of this study that was done in 2018, it talked about if your diagnosis was diabetes and you were hearing that from a doctor that looked like you, that actually may have had that in their family. There was a level of trust in that communication that didn't exist. And there was a level of trust in what the doctor told them in terms of access to care and what they needed to do. And that's just one disease state that they looked at. They looked at several more, but what this was is to really speak to why representation matters and the critical part of that representation, and how this needs to be a critical part of that quilt and that tapestry that we spoke to and the bishop spoke to earlier. Now, increasing the pipeline, and we shared on this slide a link. You can actually go to this link at the very bottom of the slide, the AP psychologist locator, and you can find a psychologist. And you can also go into, they have actually put a link for telehealth. So you have either the in-person and or telehealth, and they have both of the links inside of their locator. So there is the acknowledgement that we have to use technology to find the resources. They're very limited. The supply is low and the demand is high, but how are we using technology to help find the resources? We also recognize that telehealth has been a benefit for some, but we need to do quite a bit more. I'll pause for a second and speak to 988. And since this is a conference in Texas, we can speak about Mr. Warren, who lost his life there in Killeen, Texas, on a mental health response. We'll go to this in just a second, but what I'll say about that response was that on I think it was a Friday, his family called and said, I think it was his mother, that my son is having a mental health crisis. Please send someone who has crisis intervention training. And they did. As he was decompensating, the officer was able to actually de-escalate and took him to the hospital. And he was released and came back home. And that next day, he was still in crisis. So his family called again and asked if they could send an officer that had the training. Regrettably, they sent an officer that didn't have that training. And the language he used, they just asked him to leave. And he did comply and was leaving. And Mr. Warren came outside and didn't have anything, but was speaking to him. And it ended up with Mr. Warren losing his life. What I would say to you is that a 988 response may have been a different type of an outcome. Daniel Prude, Mr. Warren, there's so many others. So what is taking place is in July of 2022, there will be a new 3-digit number for suicide prevention. Right now, there is a 10-digit number. And there is not a number for mental health crisis. So this number will serve two purposes: national suicide prevention and mental health crisis response. So that number will go live July 21st of 2022. Now, what does that mean? If I were a policymaker and I was a legislator at the federal level and I supported this, I helped write the bill, sign off on it or whatever, I may want to wipe my hands up and say, I did great work and all my work is done. This is the beginning of the work. 988 in and of itself is not the panacea. We need to look at the front end of 988. Who's going to make those calls? How are we going to staff the centers to make those calls? What's the training going to be for the professionals making those calls? Now, Who's going to respond? Will we have mobile crisis units like the Cahoots model in Oregon to actually respond? And will we have a triage team where we have a mental health professional, a peer counselor, and a third representative in that mobile crisis unit to actually respond to that situation? And then after that, where do we actually take that person when we respond, when we de-escalate that person and we're able to provide services, and then we want to transport them to a facility that can help them? Well, what do those crisis stabilization centers look like across America? Do we have them? What does that infrastructure look like post? So there's so much that needs to be done that we, the call to action right here is for all of us to be asking our legislators, do you know about 988? Where do you stand on 988? What are you doing in your community as a political leader, as a policy leader, to ensure that all the infrastructure is there so that this number goes live, we have the resources we need? By the way, I'll be the first one to tell you that we know that we won't have all the resources on July 21st. But if we don't start those conversations now, if we don't ask the questions now, if we don't challenge our communities now, we're going to be 36 to 48 months behind where we could have been in terms of what this could be. We've seen the federal government provide some tremendous funding, new funding that we've never seen before. How do we actually leverage that funding? And many of our communities don't necessarily have a toolkit understanding how to put that money to work. So that's where we can help them. Please visit NAMI.org/advocacy crisis intervention, and you will get more info there. I'm very excited about this. We work with a number of leaders that are all excited about it. We want to make sure that we're all a part of this orchestra and that all of the instruments are playing together. What do I mean by that is that, you can, there's so much excitement about 988, we can all fall over each other and do redundant work. We're trying to make sure we're complementing each other so that we're not all focused on one piece, but there's strength in numbers, but there's also strength in the woodwinds, the percussions, and everything playing together. So we're trying to actually make that happen from the standpoint of 988 and what that could look like. But hopefully you have been hearing about it and your members, audiences, constituents are familiar with it. And we would challenge you to get the word out. Cultural humility. Dr. David I did something on behalf of NAMI with Dr. David Satcher and Patrick Kennedy, and Dr. David Satcher, past Surgeon General, United States. He talked about cultural humility and why that was critically important. And here are the 4 bullets: not assuming to know about others' cultures, histories, and life experiences. I know you had a session yesterday that also involved ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So that's a part of this, not assuming to know about others' cultures, histories, and life experiences. Committing to deliberate lifelong self-reflection about your own biases. Looking in the mirror and saying, what did I come into my adulthood with as my own biases? When I see that person crossing the street in front of my vehicle, when I see that person as I'm walking down the street, what biases, even before my body of work, what biases do I come to it with? Recognizing and addressing power imbalances. And the power imbalances, you heard me speak about that doctor, that actually Dr. Samuel Cartwright, that came up with the phrase drapetomania. Power imbalances, that was power back then, as he was a doctor. That if you look at our medical professionals of color that are going through the navigation of the space, there's still the power imbalances, and that needs to be acknowledged and understood. And then holding systems accountable. We believe the power is in the question, and the power is in accountability, and the power is all in us working together for the same causes, if you will. And that is for a better life for those living with mental illness, and to make sure they understand how valuable their lives are, and for their families. Now, one of the things we also know that in this space, it's not about bringing people to where you are, it's about meeting them where they are. And one of the things that is taking place is the Confess Project, the Barber Coalition. Whether you go to a barber or a beauty shop, if you have been going to that place for a period of time, you trust that person and you have conversations. And it's one of those places you feel safe because that is someone that has been a part of your community, if you will, for a while. So training barbers to be mental health advocates is a program that's in place, and there was a piece on a news station about it, and that is meeting people where they are. And that is something that we see as vital to this conversation and this work and into the pathways of hope. Resources. Here are a few of the resources. You've probably heard of these, and I know we had a few of our leaders speak to you on yesterday, so they probably shared this with you. And if you were part of that conversation, I apologize for the redundancy. Sharing Hope, Compartiendo Esperanza, FaithNet, Identity and Cultural Dimensions of Mental Health. I'll just go into the Sharing Hope just so that you can see a little bit about what's there. These are all links. This tells you what is Sharing Hope. And it's part of it is a 3-part video series: Youth and Mental Wellness, How Do You Heal? Community Leaders and Mental Wellness, The Art of Healing, Black Families and Mental Wellness, Smiling on Our Journey. So that is a part of the Sharing Hope. Bear with me for a second as I get back to our presentation. Let's see here. I had a feeling that may happen. All righty. All right. So as I close out the presentation, what I wanted to say to all of you all in terms of coming back to this is the helpline. In the 20 months or so, our helpline for 20 years had been brick and mortar. When COVID occurred, and our helpline was staffed by volunteers, people with lived experience that were donating up to 4 hours of their personal time per day to actually support us with our helpline. And we have over 60 volunteers. When COVID happened, we had to actually take that helpline and make it virtual. That's important to this conversation to share with you all what is possible. We were able to actually pivot and take something that had always been brick and mortar and actually take it virtual. Thank you to our volunteers for saying that they would use their personal laptops. And then we actually put the phone system, we were able to, over time, put the phone system in the cloud. And what we've also done is we've increased the hours we've done it in increments of 2. And this allows us to reach even more people. So you can text NAMI to 741-741, or you can call us at 800-950-6264. And we do have resources to support individuals and their families who call us. What's interesting is that we've seen about a 71% increase in the calls in the last year. And the calls in the last year, in terms of, we always look at the types of calls. 2019 coming into 2020, the top 2 categories, folks were looking for information and resources on bipolar and schizophrenia. I know this wouldn't be a shock to any of you all that the 2 top categories now are looking for resources on anxiety and depression. So in closing, I know that I'm right at time, so I won't necessarily go through this, but this is a video piece, and it's the trailer on Sharing Hope. I want to be respectful of the time, and I think I'm at that, Doug. You can let me know if we are there. But just wanted to say to you all in closing my comments that I love this conference every year, and what you're doing in terms of connecting the dots and building and constructing the quilt. It will take all of us. And as the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we know we want to go together. So thank you very much. And we're proud to be with you on today. Hello?
Hello, Dan.
Yes.
We do have a few minutes here. They're bringing me back in right now.
Okay, well, I can show this if you like.
Yeah, if let's see, it's 2 minutes. Yeah, let's go ahead and show it, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Can you hear it?
We need the sound higher.
Hmm.
And there's a level of humility that has to come in when we talk about mental health and emotions, because we're not going to understand it.
I was trying to bring the audio up. I don't know.
I think it's probably up about as far as it can go. Adam, will you bring me back on the screen?
About us, and it's like we're not allowed to be upset, not allowed to have depression or anxiety.
Our mental health was usually leveraged against us to really be the basis of the science and laws that existed to enslave us. A lot in our culture think that you can just pray things away. I believe in prayer, no doubt. I also understand that not one miracle in the Bible occurred without the person needing the miracle taking action.
I was just wondering, what is healing like for you? Like how would you say that you heal? Be kind to yourself. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a child, and allowing yourself to feel, I think it starts there. It's important for us to give ourselves permission to try to find what our words are, to name what's happening.
All of these things that we're talking about, we've never talked about before. And that's what's celebratory about this conversation, is that now we can be better parents, we can be better grandparents, we can be better aunts and uncles. We can say, wait a minute, they need this conversation right now.
You're never really alone. There's somebody out there that loves you or that will love you. You just have to find that person. They'll come around when you need them the most or when they need you the most, and y'all will help each other. Having that perspective that it's a journey and it's okay to smile through the journey. Okay, say that again, say it again. It's okay to smile through the journey.
All right.
Okay, Dan, I'm going to ask our technical support team to bring you back on the screen. We can share the screen here. Thank you for your presentation. There were a couple things that came up that really have come up in our community and in meetings that we've been having here on how to, for example, how we're going to use ARPA funds and how we're going to address mental health and behavioral health resources. Workforce keeps coming up, and you've addressed that in terms of a workforce that is culturally competent, a workforce that looks like me, where we are in minority communities and we don't have enough minority representation in professionals. You and I talked probably a week or two ago about some of the conversations you're having with other people around the country about the pipeline of professionals and how do we address that? Do you want to can you make a few comments on that?
Yes, thank you, Doug. We're excited, NAMI is excited to be a part of something called the CEO Huddle. The CEO Huddle is a partnership of over 14 mental health organizations, from the National Council to One Mind to the Kennedy Forum to Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute to the PEG Foundation. These are all CEOs that came together in March of last year as COVID started. And we challenged ourselves with two things, to look at the fragmented mental health system and to say what we like to see happen during COVID to help people with mental illness. And then what would we see as the new way forward coming out of COVID? And so we built something called the Unified Vision and transforming mental health care and substance use care. And in that, we have 7 categories. And a part of that is workforce development. So we have 44 signatories on top of the 14. So we have over almost 60 organizations who are focused on the knowing that there needs to be more development of the workforce and that the workforce needs to look different. One of the 7 elements, Doug, is equity. So it's workforce and equity, and we're threading equity through the conversation about workforce development. We know a whole new workforce needs to be developed to address the 988. But we also know that, and by the way, I forgot to mention both of the APAs, the American Psychiatric Association and the American Psychological Association, their CEOs are part of this huddle. And they both have created diverse pipelines to bring new psychologists into the space that look like communities of color. So they both have fellow programs, and they both have created really innovative pipeline programs to bring new doctors into the space. So we're all working together on it, and we have equity as kind of like the top of the conversation about, okay, we have to be thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging as we look at this conversation.
So I think in San Antonio and Bexar County, and I'm sure throughout the United States, every time we talk about smart teams, or like the teams they have in Oregon Cahoots, or that Dr. Paula Dobbs Wiggins talked about in Dallas with the right teams, every time we talk about teams of people, we're expanding the workforce needs that we're short on workforce now. And I know Reverend Veron Blue, who is on this session with us, she's talking about how do we equip minority communities to become more engaged, and the grassroots engagement is really one of our key strategies here to help break down these barriers of mistrust and lack of access.
Dan, I'd like to speak to that for a second. I would say to you that one of the things I experienced, I came to NAMI from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, where I got to meet a number of psychiatrists and medical professionals. And I was always in awe of those professionals that were professionals of color, in terms of when we would go to any kind of an event and you had a young person there and they saw that person and they said, wait a minute, that's a possibility for me. So what I would say for all of us is we have to celebrate those doctors that have made the decision to go into those professions. And then we have to make them poster children, if we will. They have to be that poster child in our communities, in our faith-based communities, and bring them into our churches and our places of worship too at an event. So the young people in that audience can see them and say, wait a minute, that may be something for me. You can't artificially grow the pipeline. You've got to start somewhere. And I think that we need to acknowledge our young people. The other thing is the Naomi Osaki's of the world, Osakas of the world, Simone Biles. We need to celebrate them for them stepping up. And as Naomi Osaka decided that she was going to withdraw from the French Open and took a lot of grief because she said that the media gives me anxiety and I suffer with anxiety. I would say that the ball's now in our court. We should be celebrating Naomi, and I think that America has been. We need to celebrate Simone, and I think these young people illustrating that vulnerability, in it, they've shown their strength. We need to celebrate them like we're celebrating these doctors that I was just speaking about.
It's a great way to kind of close out this session, and I want to thank you again for making time. I know you're in high demand, but we really appreciate your being here today at Pathways to Hope. Dan, thank you. And thank you for all that NAMI is doing. You've given us a lot to think about in our affiliates and a lot of tools to work with. And so we're going to try to live up to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. And thank you to everyone for what you do.
Thank you. Veron and I are going to close out the session this morning. And Veron, you want to give us a few instructions before we leave?
Yes, sure. We are going to take a short break right now before our final set of sessions, which will all begin at 1. So be sure and sign up for one of the sessions. We've got 4 of them. Bridges to Care has a breakout session. And we have one group for San Antonio and a separate group for North Texas. We have the National NAMI Peer Council. They also have a session. And there's a breakout session on housing in San Antonio for people living with a mental illness. So you be sure and check into that one if you can. And don't miss the presentation by Dr. Zori Silas Davila on La Familia, mental health in the Hispanic community. And now that the plenary sessions are over, we will close out the webinar. In a few minutes, you'll see a survey appear on the screen. Please complete it and then go to the Pathways website to select the workshop session that you're going to attend. Thank you so much for joining us this year. We appreciate your taking your time and being a part of this superb conference. Doug?
Yeah, thank you, Veron, and thank you for being, for helping MC this last day or two, and for also putting together the workshops that you did, the speaker panels. They were outstanding. I want to say thanks to some people that you have not seen on the screen. I want to thank some of them, thank all the presenters and panelists who really gave the best of their time to be part of this conference. I want to thank the steering committee, and again, they're on the website, they're listed there. They meet throughout the year, and they're instrumental in helping us bring these speakers to the conference. I want to thank the NAMI San Antonio staff, CJ Van Green and Lori Packard and everybody on our staff who work really all throughout the year and who work countless hours to put this conference together. And I want to thank Virtual Productions, Inc., our technical support company that helps us produce this, for their help, Adam Mooring and Susan Smiley. And excuse me, to all our volunteers. Behind the scenes, we had people who were our technical support people who did a lot of the behind the scenes tasks. They're volunteers. They're NAMI volunteers. Thank you very, very much. We want to see you at 1 o'clock in these breakout sessions, but we also want to see you next year. Please fill out the surveys. They do help us a lot in terms of putting together the program. We will be back next year. We're not sure exactly how or in what format, but we need to keep this rolling. Thank you to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you at 1 p.m.